So imagine logging on to Goodreads to find a quote from a beloved American poet.
Right, like you're looking for some inspiration for the day.
Exactly. You scroll down and you're expecting something profound about the human condition, and instead you read this, quote, "No man could drink them all, what a feast."
Oh, boy.
Yeah, and he is not talking about whiskey or wine here. He is talking about women.
Wow.
Right. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking the life, the literature, and the honestly intensely enduring controversy of Charles Bukowski.
It's an author profile that essentially, well, it forces us onto the ultimate cultural tightrope.
It really does.
Because on one hand, he is celebrated as the poet laureate of the American lowlife, like this unflinching voice for the working class.
Right.
But simultaneously, he is widely condemned as a raging misogynist and, frankly, a chronic abuser.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've spent any time in a bookstore, you know the name. You know those stark, gritty, black and white covers of his book.
You can't miss him.
But the man behind the typewriter was, well, he was like a heavily fortified bunker where the defense systems were so aggressive they just ended up firing on the inhabitants.
That is a great way to put it.
And to map out the contours of this debate without just relying on, random internet hearsay, we've pulled a very eclectic stack of sources for you today.
We really have. So right off the bat, we're looking at a recent sociological study on feminist literature. And this breaks down his work through a very modern lens.
Mm-hmm.
We're reading that alongside a deeply researched biographical essay from the Diva portal, which traces how his real life basically bled right into his fiction.
Which is fascinating. And we also brought in an opinion piece from the Daily Campus, right? Wrestling with the actual morality of reading his work today.
Yes, and a very, very personal essay from Electric Literature. It's written by a modern female reader who is just trying to understand the men who idolize him.
Add to that a breakdown of his famously controversial novel, Women, and a collection of direct quotes from his readers, and we have, well, a full panoramic view here.
A lot of ground to cover.
A ton. And to be clear with you listening right now, our mission today is not to take sides. We aren't here to cancel Bukowski, and we certainly aren't here to act as his defense attorneys.
Absolutely not. We are completely neutral observers here.
Right. We are just going to unpack the brutal origins of his style, which is known as dirty realism. We're going to stare directly at his highly problematic portrayal of women and try to understand why his work continues to exert such a magnetic pull.
We'll just lay out the evidence from the sources and let you form your own conclusions.
Exactly.
Because the truth we found in these texts is just far more complicated than a simple hero or villain narrative.
It's messy, very messy.
Highly messy. To understand the man who wrote those incredibly controversial words, we have to rewind the tape all the way to the very beginning.
The childhood.
Yes. His childhood wasn't just difficult. I mean, the sources make it read like a meticulous blueprint for long-term psychological trauma.
Yeah, the biographical essay gives us a pretty grim timeline right from the jump. So he was born Heinrich Karl Bukowski in August 1920 over in Germany.
Right.
His father was an American soldier stationed there after World War I, and his mother was a German seamstress. And the family moved to the United States when he was just a toddler, eventually settling in Los Angeles.
But life in Los Angeles is definitely not the American dream for them.
Well, no, not at all. It's marked by severe, grinding poverty.
But, the poverty almost takes a backseat to the profound social isolation his parents forced upon him.
Oh, this part is just wild to me.
It is. The sources note that his parents, and particularly his father, harbored this massive delusion of superiority.
Yeah.
They genuinely believed they were above their neighbors, despite being completely broke.
Right, so they basically forbade young Charles, or Hank as his friends later called him, from playing with the other children.
And the reason is the craziest part. They were pathologically obsessed with him not ruining his clothes.
Which is such a bizarre, specific anxiety to project onto a kid. Think about a young child being literally trapped in his own yard. Just watching other kids play through a fence, completely ostracized because his parents are worried about grass stains.
Yeah, he was completely cut off.
And because he was this strange, isolated new boy with a mother who had a thick German accent, the neighborhood kids relentlessly made fun of him. So the outside world is incredibly hostile.
Oh, but inside the house.
Inside the house is a total nightmare.
Exactly. His father was a cruel, domineering man who subjected his son to systematic, brutal, physical abuse.
It's so hard to read about.
It really is. And the psychological component of that abuse is what really stands out in the biographical text.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to talk about the lawn mowing incident.
Oh, yeah, that is a rough one.
It's detailed in his autobiographical novel, Ham on Rye, and it is just chilling. Because mowing the lawn wasn't just a chore for him. His father turned it into this sadistic psychological thriller.
He demanded the grass be cut flawlessly. Not just well, flawlessly.
Right, which is a setup for guaranteed failure.
Completely. The father would literally get down on his hands and knees on the freshly cut grass, just putting his face inches from the dirt, hunting for a single mistake.
And the quote Bukowski remembers from this is haunting. His father finds one single blade of grass sticking up higher than the rest, and he starts screaming.
What did he say?
He screams, ah, 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 mama, I found a hair. I can see it. I can see two of them.
Unbelievable.
I know. He equated a slightly taller blade of grass to a hair. It's a terrifying level of micro-scrutiny.
And the punishment for this inevitable failure, of course, was a vicious beating in the bathroom with a razor strop.
It's awful.
And the sources emphasize this wasn't a one-time explosion of anger. This was the regular, daily rhythm of his childhood.
Yeah, and as if that physical and emotional abuse wasn't enough, puberty hits him like a freight train.
Acne.
Yes, he develops a horrific case of acne vulgaris, and the doctors told him it was the worst case they had ever seen.
We aren't talking about a few teenage pimples here.
Not at all. He had massive, painful boils covering his face and upper body. The medical treatments at the time were agonizing, and it left him deeply physically scarred for life.
So he was beaten black and blue at home, rejected by his peers outside, and then his own body essentially turns against him.
Exactly. He had no safe haven.
But the psychological linchpin of his entire worldview, and this is so vital to understanding his later treatment of women, was his mother, Katharina.
Because she did absolutely nothing.
Right.
Nothing at all.
The essay points out that throughout all of these beatings, throughout the razor strop and the screaming over blades of grass, she just stood by and watched.
And when he finally asked her, why she didn't help him, her response was simply, the father is always right.
Wow. The father is always right.
It's a statement of absolute complicity. The essay suggests Katharina was adhering to a strict patriarchal norm where the husband's word was law.
Even over the safety of her own kid.
Exactly. To the point where she completely suppressed any maternal instinct to protect her child. I look at that and I just think, isn't that the ultimate betrayal? Having a monster for a father is one thing. You can categorize him as the enemy,
Well, he's the bad guy.
Yeah. But when your primary female caregiver, the person biologically wired to offer unconditional love and safety, watches you get destroyed and basically says, yeah, you deserve this, that has to completely rewire a developing brain.
It absolutely did. The biographical sources argue that Bukowski never forgave his mother. She meant absolutely nothing to him in his adult life.
I can understand why.
But more importantly, Katharina became the twisted baseline from which his exaggerated aversion towards women sprang.
Ah, so that's the root of it.
Subconsciously, he expected all women to eventually reveal themselves as complicit, disappointing, and emotionally vacant, just like her.
It's the fortified bunker analogy again. If you strip a child entirely of power, love, and safety and lock them in a bunker with enemies, the inevitable breakout is going to be incredibly ugly. It's going to be raw, defiant, and completely lacking in grace. Because grace was never modeled for him. And this directly feeds into his literary style, doesn't it?
Yes.
This is where dirty realism comes from.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is the exact crucible for it. The academic papers we reviewed discuss how this environment instilled a deep-seated distrust of authority and societal norms.
Right.
To understand the mechanism of dirty realism, you kind of have to look at what it was reacting against. Think about the mainstream American literature of the 1960s and 70s.
Okay, so a lot of post-war optimism.
Or at least very elegant prose. You had authors writing these sprawling, heavily adjective-laden novels about suburban angst and upper-middle-class ennui.
Right, flowery prose about blooming meadows and gentle romances and whatever.
Exactly. And then Bukowski comes in with a sledgehammer. Dirty realism strips all of that away.
I can't.
It's mechanically, on a syntactic level, it relies on short declarative sentences.
Just boom, boom, boom.
Yes. It completely avoids adverbs and flowery descriptions. The sources describe it as the prose of a man who expects to be hit.
Wow. The prose of a man who expects to be hit. That is profound.
He wrote about poverty, manual labor, cheap hotel rooms, and desperation because that was his reality. His blunt, abrasive language was literally a survival mechanism translated onto the page.
Because he didn't use societal niceties in his syntax, because societal niceties had never protected him in real life.
Precisely. Why dress up the language when the world is so ugly?
So how does a traumatized, acne-scarred young man actually get out of that house and start writing?
Well, the essay gives us this really heartbreaking detail.
Okay.
He manages to get into Los Angeles City College, taking some journalism courses. He starts secretly writing short stories, hiding them in his room because he knows his father would absolutely hate them.
Naturally. But the father finds them.
He does, and Henry Sr. doesn't just yell at him. He flies into a violent rage. He's screaming that no son of his is going to write filth and live under his roof.
And he grabs the typewriter, right?
Yes. He takes Charles's typewriter, along with all of his manuscripts, and physically throws them out the window into the yard.
Just smashing the one thing his son had found solace in.
Exactly. Which is the ultimate breaking point. Bukowski packs his things, leaves home, and begins his life as a drifter.
He heads to New York in 1939 to try to make it as a writer, right?
Yeah, but he completely fails to get published.
And when the New York publishing world rejects you, and your typewriter is literally in pieces back in Los Angeles, what do? You build a new shield.
And for Bukowski, that shield was booze.
A staggering 10-year drinking binge, to be precise.
10 years. Just think about that.
From 1946 until the mid-1950s, he essentially abandoned writing altogether. He lived at the absolute bottom of the bottle.
Working terrible manual labor jobs and drifting from place to place.
And this period only ended because he developed a bleeding ulcer that very nearly killed him. He woke up in a charity ward, surviving by a thread.
He basically drank himself to the edge of death.
He really did. And after surviving that ulcer, he starts writing again. But the alcohol never leaves. It's always there.
No, it stays with him his whole life.
And I really want to dig into the mechanics of this, because the sociological study we're looking at cites research arguing that the alcohol wasn't just a coping mechanism or a bad habit.
Right. It was much more structural than that.
It was the engine of his work.
The researchers argue that alcohol was fundamentally woven into the fabric of his creative identity. Yes, it was a coping mechanism to numb the trauma. But more importantly for his literature, it altered his actual writing process.
It lowered the drawbridge.
Exactly.
But how so? I mean, in what way did it mechanically change his work? Like, what does the study say?
Well, intoxication and the subsequent hangovers created a very specific rhythm in his prose. The study suggests his alcoholism served as a tool to articulate the alienation of the working class.
Okay.
When you are drinking heavily, your emotional filters dissolve. You swing from grandiosity to deep, agonizing despair. Bukowski harnessed that chemical roller coaster.
So he's using the literal chemical imbalance of the hangover.
Yes. He couldn't have written about the gutter with such devastating accuracy if he hadn't spent decades lying in it. The booze dissolved the boundary between his internal pain and the blank page.
Which brings us to the other massive boundary he dissolved, the creation of his literary alter ego, Henry Chinaski.
Yes, the infamous Chinaski.
Chinaski is the protagonist of almost all his major novels. We're talking Post Office, Factotum, Women.
Basically his entire catalog.
And Bukowski famously claimed his work was 93% autobiographical and only 7% improved upon.
Though biographers strongly suspect that improved upon percentage is a pretty massive underestimation.
I would guess so, yeah.
The line between Charles Bukowski the man and Henry Chinaski the character is deliberately blurred, to the point of being totally indistinguishable for many readers.
And this is where I really struggle with him, to be honest.
How so?
Well, is creating Hank Chinaski just a massive literary get-out-of-jail-free card, like the ultimate moral loophole of fiction?
That is a very valid question.
Does slapping the label novel on a book allow an author to behave abominably on the page? To write out their darkest, most violent or misogynistic fantasies, and then just wash their hands of it by saying, hey, don't look at me, that's Chinaski.
That is the absolute crux of the debate surrounding his legacy. In literary theory, you generally separate the author from the narrator.
Right, like Stephen King isn't a literal clown in a sewer.
Exactly. But Bukowski intentionally weaponized that separation. Chinaski allows the reader to experience Bukowski's genuine isolation and his struggle against a crushing, indifferent capitalist society.
Which is the part people praise.
Right. But Chinaski is also the vessel for Bukowski's worst, most unchecked impulses.
He's an emotional lightning rod.
Precisely. Chinaski is selfish, cowardly, and abusive. If a reader is disgusted by Chinaski's actions, Bukowski can theoretically retreat behind the shield of fiction.
He can play the "it's just a story" card.
Yet, by making Chinaski so clearly a mirror image of himself, he dares the reader to judge the man behind the curtain. It's a highly manipulative, very effective defense mechanism.
And that shared skin between author and character is where the real friction sparks, especially when we look at how Chinaski treats women.
Yes, this is the eye of the storm in all of our sources.
The academic papers, the op-eds, the literary essays, they all agree on one thing. The texts are deeply, fundamentally misogynistic.
It is undeniable. The sociological study highlights his novels and poetry collections, like Love is a Dog from Hell.
Even the title gives you a hint.
The researchers point out that women in these texts are consistently portrayed as one-dimensional objects of desire, existing almost exclusively for male gratification.
They aren't really people in the text.
No. They are frequently described using derogatory language. Terms like whores and bitches are thrown around casually, reducing these characters to physical attributes entirely devoid of agency.
And it isn't just name-calling, it violently manifests in the actual plot lines.
It really does.
The Daily Campus opinion piece points to a scene in the novel factotum that is incredibly hard to stomach.
Oh, the bar scene.
Yes. Halfway through the book, Chinaski finds his girlfriend flirting with other men in a bar. And he doesn't go over and have an argument. He walks up and physically slaps her off her bar stool to the floor.
He commits a public assault.
Yes.
And the truly chilling part of that scene is the aftermath.
Right. Because he turns to the crowded bar and says, "Now, if there's anybody here who doesn't like what I just did, just say so."
And what happens?
Absolute silence. Nobody speaks. Nobody defends her. He takes that silence as validation.
Yeah.
It's a scene dripping with unchecked cruelty.
And this worldview permeates his later work as well. If we look at the quotes pulled from his readers on Goodreads, specifically from the novel Women, his perspective is glaringly stark.
What's the quote?
He writes, "Gradually, I came to realize that my understanding of women goes only as far as the pleasure is concerned." He essentially reduces half the human race to a utility.
There's another quote from the same book. "Where did all the women come from? The supply was endless. No man could drink them all. What a feast."
That's the one we mentioned at the start.
Yeah. He is literally equating human women to bottles of alcohol, something to be consumed until he is full and then discarded on the floor.
But if we examine the structure of the novel Women through the plot breakdown we sourced, a more complex picture starts to emerge.
Really? How so?
The novel is essentially a revolving door of bedrooms. Chinaski, who is now an older, famous writer, cycles through various partners. There's the music executive, Tammy the speed addict, Iris the belly dancer.
Well, it's a relentless, almost numbing carousel of women.
But as the novel progresses, the plot breakdown notes a shift. A latent guilt complex slowly begins to develop.
Interesting.
Chinaski starts to realize that he is actively hurting these people. He is pushing good women away. And when he tries to excuse his behavior to himself, what does he fall back on?
Let me guess. His childhood.
Bingo. He blames the fact that he was not loved enough as a child. He falls right back on the trauma of the mother and the razor strop.
Typical.
He also claims he is making up for lost time, having been married to a woman he considered sexless during his 20s and 30s. He is highly aware of his damage, but he weaponizes it to justify his ongoing destructive behavior.
I have to call out the massive hypocrisy here, though. Bukowski is a walking contradiction when it comes to human connection.
What do you mean?
Well, in one breath, he says, "Love is a form of prejudice. I have too many other prejudices." He constantly claims to hate people, says crowds drain him, and champions being a recluse.
He loved the image of the lone wolf.
Yet the vast majority of his literary output is an obsessive, relentless chronicle of intimate connection with women. How can you claim to want to be entirely alone while spending hundreds of pages desperately seeking female validation?
It's a profound paradox. The biographical essay attempts to parse some of his terminology, which adds another frustrating layer to all of this.
Oh, this part frustrated me so much.
When Bukowski was confronted about his constant use of the word whore, his explanation was highly idiosyncratic.
To put it mildly.
He claimed that in his personal lexicon, a whore meant a woman who loves one man.
What?
He also claimed he used the word to symbolize death, which to him was intrinsically linked to love.
Okay, wait. Hold on. I'm calling BS on that.
Oh, absolutely.
That sounds like total historical revisionism. Is there any actual evidence he used it that way in his private life, or was he just backpedaling to save face with literary critics?
It definitely reads as a defensive intellectualization.
It sounds like a very convenient, pseudo-poetic excuse for using a deeply degrading slur.
He was backed into a corner and threw poetry at the problem, and the academic sources are very clear on this distinction. The researchers note that his ethics were formed during the Depression, long before women's liberation, and that his severe trauma scarred him. However, this is a big however, the sociological study explicitly states that while critics can map out where these portrayals come from, the historical and psychological context does not absolve the problematic treatment of women in his work.
Exactly. You can explain the origin of a toxic behavior, but explaining it doesn't excuse it.
Right.
The harm is still being perpetuated on the page. And that brings us to a really uncomfortable reality check. Because it is one thing to analyze Henry Chinaski slapping a fictional woman off a bar stool.
Right, a character.
It is an entirely different, much heavier thing to realize that the fictional woman was based on a real human being.
We have to transition from the text to the real-life fallout here.
Yes, we do.
Almost all of these characters were based on real lovers. These were real women who shared their lives, their bodies, and their vulnerabilities with Charles Bukowski, and who were completely blindsided by how they were immortalized in print.
Let's talk about Linda King, because the biographical essay goes into deep detail about her experience.
She's a very prominent figure in his life.
She was a sculptor, a poet herself, and a fiercely independent woman. But in the novel Women, she is transformed into the character Lydia Vance.
And how does Chinaski describe Lydia?
He calls her the head cheerleader at the game of violence. He writes a highly exaggerated scene where she breaks into his house, smashes his art and books, and gets arrested.
And Linda King's reaction?
She read this and felt completely caricatured, just reduced to an insane, jealous harpy.
Then there is Amber O'Neill. The contrast between her reality and his fiction is staggering.
This one is so sad to me.
She had a weekend tryst with Bukowski. According to her, they had a profound, meaningful, and emotionally intimate connection.
She thought it was beautiful.
But when she reads Women, she discovers she had been turned into Tanya, a 23-year-old, 90-pound pen pal.
Yeah.
And what does Bukowski choose to focus on regarding their profound weekend?
Not the emotional connection, I'm guessing?
No. He explicitly, clinically criticizes her sexual performance, specifically writing that she didn't know how to perform oral sex.
I mean, can you even imagine the visceral shock of reading that?
It would be horrifying.
You think you've shared a genuine, tender weekend with an artist you really admire, and then you open a best-selling novel to find your sexual prowess degraded and mocked for the entertainment of millions of strangers.
It's the ultimate betrayal of privacy.
Amber O'Neill was so devastated and honestly so furious that she actually wrote and self-published a chapbook titled Blowing My Hero just to reclaim her own narrative and tell her side of the story.
Good for her. And perhaps the saddest example detailed in the sources is the woman Bukowski referred to as Cupcakes.
Oh, right.
In the novel, she is renamed Cammy. She is portrayed as a speed addict, a completely loose woman, essentially functioning as a prostitute.
And when the real Cupcakes read the book, what happened?
Her reaction was heartbreaking. She publicly stated, "I came across as an airheaded, cock-sucking nothing," which I wasn't at all.
Wow.
She felt utterly stripped of any substance, intellect, or humanity, just completely reduced to an object.
And we can't forget Jane. Jane was arguably the great love of Bukowski's early life. She died tragically of alcoholism in 1962.
A huge loss for him.
And she is the basis for the woman that Chinaski violently slaps off the bar stool in Factotum. He immortalized the supposed great love of his life by documenting himself physically assaulting her.
It's twisted.
But here's the bizarre disconnect. The essay points out that despite the brutality in his novels, Bukowski's real-life behavior could be starkly different.
Yes, the biographical data notes he was substantially supportive of female artists in the underground press, exchanging letters and encouraging many women writers.
And he was fiercely, almost violently protective of his real-life daughter, Marina.
Oh, yeah.
He once physically threatened a friend, demanding he keep his hands off his daughter. So I really have to ask here, how does a man who will literally fight someone to protect his real-life daughter turn around and write female characters who are entirely devoid of agency and treated like absolute garbage?
It's hard to wrap your head around it.
Is it a power dynamic? Is he punishing women on the page because he couldn't punish his mother in real life?
What's fascinating here is the psychology behind it. It's a classic case of preemptive devaluation.
Preemptive devaluation. Okay.
Amber O'Neill, the woman who became Tanya, made a very astute observation in her writings. She noted that Bukowski had been rejected by women for almost his entire life.
Right.
He was conventionally ugly, he was broke, he was a severe alcoholic. Then suddenly, in his 50s, he achieves massive literary fame, and young, beautiful women are throwing themselves at him.
It's the ultimate revenge of the nerd, but completely twisted by paranoia.
Exactly. His deep-seated insecurity couldn't process it. He couldn't believe these women actually desired him. He constantly suspected their motives were purely based on his fame and money.
So he didn't trust them.
Right. So as a defense mechanism, a preemptive strike against being hurt, manipulated, or abandoned like his mother abandoned him, he degraded them in print. He reduced them to hollow, sex-obsessed objects on the page so they couldn't wield any emotional power over him in his own mind.
He broke them on the page before they could break him in real life.
Precisely.
It is an incredibly toxic, but frankly fascinating psychological survival tactic. And this leads us to what is perhaps the most compelling part of this entire deep dive.
The modern readers.
Yes, because if his treatment of women was so horrific, if it caused so much real-world pain to the Linda Kings and Amber O'Neills of the world, why does he remain a cult hero?
It's a huge question.
Why are his books still in print, selling millions of copies? And specifically, why is he so fiercely idolized by a certain demographic of young men?
To understand this enduring appeal, we have to look closely at the essay from Electric Literature, written by Cassandra Boehm. It provides a crucial modern lens on the whole Bukowski phenomenon.
This essay is brilliant because she approaches Bukowski with the exact skepticism and disgust that a lot of modern readers have.
Totally.
She writes that she worked in a bookstore and actively avoided Bukowski for years, and her reason was incredibly relatable. She says every toxic, emotionally stunted guy she ever went on a bad date with idolized Charles Bukowski.
It's a trope for a reason.
She collectively names this archetype Trevor.
We all know a Trevor.
We really do.
He is the archetype of the guy who wears his damage like a badge of honor, who uses cynicism to mask a profound lack of emotional intelligence, and who probably has a brooding Chinaski quote in his dating app profile.
Right. So she associated Bukowski entirely with male condescension, infidelity, and an unwillingness to sexually satisfy a woman, all because of the Trevors she encountered in her life.
Which is a fair association to make.
But eventually, she ends up with a partner who's a genuinely good guy, but who happens to have a Bukowski tattoo and read women after a bad breakup. To understand her partner's damage, she finally decides to actually sit down and read the novel.
And her initial reading experience completely validates her disgust.
She hated it.
She is viscerally horrified. She notes the complete lack of affirmative consent in the sexual encounters. She's repulsed by the misogyny, and finds the daily drunken routines of Chinaski's life mundane and frankly depressing.
She is ready to close the book and write him off forever. But I want to slow down here because she hits the halfway mark of the book and something shifts. She finds the passage, the quote that suddenly makes the entire Bukowski phenomenon click into place for her.
It's a really pivotal moment in the essay. Chinaski is reflecting on his endless string of breakups and empty encounters, and he says, quote, I had to taste women in order to really know them, to get inside them, so I explored them as best I could, and I found human beings inside.
Which, admittedly, starts off sounding pretty predatory, right? Tasting women to get inside them.
Yeah, not a great start.
But then the prose pivots into this stunning, completely unguarded meditation on love and loneliness. He continues, I was sentimental about many things. A woman's shoes under the bed, one hairpin left behind on the dresser, the way they said, I'm gonna pee, hair ribbons, walking down the boulevard with them at 1:30 in the afternoon, the long nights of drinking and smoking, talking, comparing past loves at 3 a.m., being told you snore, hearing her snore, sometimes death and sometimes divorce, but always carrying on, always seeing it through.
It's a breathtakingly tender passage.
Yeah.
It really is. It's hidden in the middle of all this filth, swearing, and bravado, but it's there.
When I read that quote in her essay, I had my own aha moment. You suddenly realize that Chinaski's aggressive machismo, the constant swearing, the objectification, it is all a frantic, desperate mask.
A mask for what?
For a deep, terrifying sensitivity and a desperate romanticism that he does not understand in himself. He is terrified to show the world he cares about a single hairpin left on a dresser because the world, starting with his father, has always beaten him for showing any vulnerability.
And this realization is the key to the Trevor demographic.
Yes, exactly.
These young men who lack the emotional intelligence to process their own feelings of inadequacy, rejection, or heartbreak, they gravitate to Bukowski.
Because it's safe.
Right. They use Chinaski's bravado. They adopt the cynical, hard-drinking, womanizing persona to shield their own profound vulnerabilities. They relate to the damage, but they hide behind the aggression.
It's like, imagine finding an incredibly delicate, beautiful, rare orchid. But it's growing at the very bottom of a rusted-out, toxic oil drum filled with industrial sludge.
That's quite the image.
You have to wade through knee-deep, foul-smelling sludge just to catch a glimpse of the flower. For the Trevors, the sludge is the actual appeal. They think the sludge makes them cool and edgy.
But for readers like the essayist,
For readers like her, finding that flower makes the journey through the sludge, while still gross, somehow understandable, it provides context for the pain.
that analogy perfectly captures the dual reading experience. But the critical difference that the electric literature essayist points out is so vital here.
What's that?
She notes that Chinaski does eventually realize his behavior is problematic. He admits to himself in the text, "I wasn't considering anything but my own selfish, cheap pleasure. I was like a spoiled high school kid."
Wait, really? He actually has the realization. He sees the damage he's doing to these women?
He has the epiphany,
Uh,
but he never changes. He acknowledges his selfishness and then goes right back to the bar to do it again. The essayist argues that the ultimate challenge for the modern male reader, the true challenge for the Trevors, is to recognize the vulnerability and the pain in Chinaski, but to make the active, difficult choice to be better than the character.
to not emulate him.
Exactly. Chinaski is a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual. You were supposed to see his failure to evolve and choose to evolve yourself.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we have to answer today. We've seen the trauma of the razor strop. We've examined the mechanical use of alcohol.
The lowering of the drawbridge.
We've read the glaring misogyny, the pain caused to real women, and we've uncovered the hidden, desperate sensitivity underneath it all. So where does that leave us? What is the final verdict here? Does Charles Bukowski's sexism make him a bad writer?
The Daily Campus opinion piece tackles this exact question head-on, and the author argues that while Bukowski's violent stories and his treatment of women are absolutely condemnable, writing off a literary giant solely for his moral shortcomings is intellectually lazy.
The writer uses a great phrase for this. He says, criticizing Bukowski only for his morals is like swinging at a baseball on a tee.
It requires zero effort.
Right. It's the easiest take in the world to point at his behavior and say, this guy was a jerk, cancel him, don't read him.
It is the easy way out. Because human beings are not monolithic, and brilliant art is rarely created by saints. The academic sources we've reviewed synthesize this complex legacy.
And what do they conclude?
They argue forcefully that we shouldn't dismiss him entirely because within the misogyny and the filth, there are genuine glimmers of empathy. He successfully captures the despair, the alienation, and the grim reality of the marginalized American underbelly better than almost anyone else of his generation. He gave a voice to the invisible working class.
So to you, the listener, maybe driving to work or doing the dishes right now, this deep dive isn't telling you to love Charles Bukowski. And it's not telling you to hate him either.
No, we just wanted to lay it all out.
But think about this. If we only read authors who are morally pure, if we only consume art made by people who have never said a wrong word, never hurt a partner, never struggled with toxic demons, how empty would our bookshelves be?
Pretty empty.
We'd be left with a very sanitized, very thin, and frankly, very boring library that doesn't reflect the actual messy, agonizing reality of the human condition.
The academic recommendation here is not censorship. It is critical engagement. The antidote to problematic literature isn't burning the books. It's balance.
Balance is key.
Read Bukowski to understand his specific, broken slice of the world. Acknowledge the immense pain he caused and the severe biases he held, but then counterbalance it.
Seek out diverse voices.
Exactly. Read female authors from the same era. Read marginalized creators. Immerse yourself in a full spectrum of experiences so you aren't just absorbing one damaged man's worldview. Engage with the text, question the stereotypes, and use it to develop a more robust understanding of the world.
It's about being an active, questioning reader rather than just a passive consumer absorbing sludge.
Well said.
So let's look back at this incredible journey we've taken today. We started in 1920s Los Angeles with a young boy forbidden to play, beaten mercilessly in a bathroom over a single blade of grass, learning from his mother's silence that abuse is just the natural order of the world.
A tragic beginning.
We watched him take that profound trauma and forge it into the alter ego of Henry Chinaski, fueled by alcohol, giving birth to the short, sharp shock of dirty realism.
We confronted the deeply problematic, objectifying, and sometimes physically violent treatment of the real women.
Like Amber O'Neil and Linda King, who became his muses and his victims. And finally, we dug through the machismo to find the hidden layers of romanticism and terrifying vulnerability that keep his work resonating with lost souls today.
It is a legacy that completely resists easy categorization. It is a stark testament to the fact that groundbreaking art can, and often does, come from deeply damaged sources.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering idea to chew on. We've spent all this time analyzing Bukowski, diagnosing his childhood trauma, and judging his actions as an adult. But what if the true value of reading a deeply flawed author like Charles Bukowski isn't really about learning who he was?
Okay, where are you going with this?
What if it's actually an exercise in testing who we are?
That is a fascinating reframing of the reader's role.
Think about it. When you are reading a horrific, misogynistic scene in Factotum, or when you are struck by a surprisingly beautiful, tender line of poetry in Love is a Dog from Hell, the revulsion or the empathy you feel in your gut isn't just about the words printed on the page.
Right.
It's a mirror. It's reflecting your own hitting boundaries. It's testing your own internal biases. And ultimately, it's measuring your own capacity for forgiveness.
That's a powerful thought.
If you can look at the broken, ugly, deeply toxic mess of Henry Chinaski and still find a tiny shred of shared humanity, well, maybe that means we don't have to be perfect to be understood. Keep reading, keep questioning, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.